Hey, good morning.
Good morning and happy Tuesday to everyone. My name is Kim Spillers.
And I'm Frank Spillers, and we are
Rural Community Solutions, and we are so glad that you have joined us either on our live stream or you have downloaded our podcast and are listening to us there. We are the company that helps you design family-friendly, youth-centered places that thrive and attract entrepreneurs and build an entrepreneurial ecosystem. All kinds of wonderful things to re-energize your community. So welcome to today's episode.
So if you followed us, you know that we usually do an opening video, but we're not going to do the video today because, we got mixed reactions about it. Some people like it, some people don't. So let us know what you like. But the gist of it is that 120, 100, 200 years ago, whenever your community was founded, somebody jumped off a wagon, planted the flag and said, "This is my community." So that's how your community was founded. Somebody wanted and looked out over the land and claimed it as theirs, claimed it as a community. And I'm not going to get into the politics. I'm not going to get into past histories and who owned the land or who not, but that's how your community started. Whether it was right or wrong, that's up to you. You have to make that decision. And I hope when you were in school, they taught you how to think, not what to think when you were there. So you can think freely about anything that I say and judge it for yourself. So anyway, they jumped off that wagon and they planted their flag. And then they wrote back to people and said, "Here, this is my community. Come on out. I want to start a new community. You'll love it out here. The weather's great. At least in between April and
depends on where they go
and October, but
yes,
winters are good if you have the Rocky Mountains and you can ski. We're going to start a ski slope. We're going to do this. We're going to do that." Anyway, they started businesses to support the farms around the community because the farms planted local food. They were your first traditional farmers. They planted food to feed their family. That's traditional farming. And so as they planted their food, they also needed supplies to buy. They couldn't grow their rope. They couldn't grow their fences. They couldn't grow their seed. They had to buy their seed from someplace to plant. And so communities popped up, businesses popped up in a community to where the farmers could go into town, get supplies. Well, then Saturday nights came along and farmers and people and families wanted to, what we call in the Midwest, they wanted to kick up their heels a little bit and relax. And so every Saturday night, Main Street was full. Main Street was a bustling to entertain. And they built businesses around to entertain families. How did you attract them? How did you create that environment? So we're going to be talking about that because that was your first original traditional startup community. It's awesome. Where your community supported its people, supported people going into business, supported them, not dragged them down, but supported them because they knew if they didn't come together and build a supportive community that supported their businesses, that supported their people, that supported their neighbors, they would not survive. Mm-hmm. They would not survive because they were out in the prairie. They were out alone. They didn't have the internet. They didn't have communication devices. They just could have gone by the wayside. And so they worked and they worked and they worked to build the environment that supported people, and they built a great supportive culture.
So what they did, and they worked and they worked and they worked, is that they worked together. Collaboration is such a huge part of community development, community engagement. I imagine we're going to talk about our 4 pillars because that fits in just exactly right. At Rural Community Solutions, we have 4 pillars: relationships, engagement, collaboration, and all of those together build entrepreneurship and entrepreneurial wealth. And there's all kinds of wonderful things that come from working intentionally about those 4 pillars. And so that working together, that collaboration is so critical in whatever community you live. And yes, so wow,
So
I'll stop there for
okay,
right this second.
so let's talk about those 4 pillars that we have. Now Rural Community Solutions helps communities design that environment that attracts family-friendly, youth-centered places. Now, it's the environment that you're building. You're not building a swing set. You're not building a building. You're not building a co-working space that's going to attract entrepreneurs. Those things are built after you create the environment. So in our title of today's show, we said there's two important elements that you need. So we're going to get to those 2 elements. But first, there is the pillars that you have to build upon to get to those elements, because those elements aren't just there. One of the elements is the upfront. Okay, so I will say that one of those elements is at least a 20-year commitment. Now, when you're building your startup community, you have to go here and then out 20 years. Next year, you have to go here and out 20 years. So your startup community is looking 20 years out every single time. You're not counting back from 20 years. You're not getting close to 20 years. It's a 20-year process. Whatever you're doing is a 20-year process. In other words, you have to commit to the long term. Now, commitment is you're doing whatever it takes. If you're interested in creating a startup community, which many of our communities are, then you'll just do whatever's convenient. You'll do what the budget will allow. You'll do what your leaders will allow. You will do what your current leadership will allow. You'll do what your current political party will allow. You'll do what your current people will allow right now, because it's what's convenient. It's what will make them look better. But commitment is you will do whatever it takes. And there's very few communities out there that are doing whatever it takes to do that. And so here at Rural Community Solutions, we use basically 4 pillars to do that. We build relationships. We create an engagement factor, an engaging environment where people can talk through issues, not just about them. And I'm going to get to that in just a little bit. And then we build what's called a collaborative environment. Kim talked about collaboration, so important on building your community. A collaborative environment and a collaboration effort is working and looking at how people work together, not what they do, not the projects that they get. So it's all about the people. It's all about using their purpose and their passion together to have them work more together to get something done. But it's not about the end result. So really, in your startup community, using collaboration, you are using your startup people. You are using your people to create that environment that's going to create that collaboration environment that's going to move it forward. It's not about the end result. Remember, I said 20 years out all the time. It's 20 years out. So how are your people working together for the next 20 years, for 20 years, for 20 years? And so when you have relationships and you have engagement and you have collaboration, then you add in entrepreneurship, that you focus on entrepreneurs. You focus on how do we support entrepreneurs, and you build that entrepreneurial economy. That's a startup community. That's a startup community. You have to have those elements in place before you can even claim to have a startup community. Because if you don't have those, then you're just kind of flailing in the wind. Now, 20 years out was the first long-term factor, right? The second long-term factor that I want to add in there is trust. If entrepreneurs don't trust your community and you don't trust your entrepreneurs, it won't work. Trust is the major factor on building a startup community. You need to trust that the support is going to be there. Now, your leadership or your people that are the startup champions in your community, they need to trust that that environment's going to be there. And the entrepreneurs need to trust that the environment's going to be there. And how do you build trust? You build trust by learning how to build great relationships. Learning, notice I said you have to learn, because there's very few communities out there that have great relationships, that know how to build great relationships. And then you have to learn how to do engagement, how to create the environment to where people feel they can talk about why they feel the way they do about an issue. Now, why is engagement so important? All right. So you want to jump in on any of this?
Of course I do, because I have some thoughts too. One of the things that I wanted to just make sure to include is in this whole idea of having a 20-year span of thinking ahead is another tenet that we use at Rural Community Solutions, is that every decision that you make, no matter in your committee or in your family or in your board or at your business or in your city council meeting or your school board or wherever it is, how will this decision affect children? And so when you're thinking about children, like think about your own children, your grandchildren, when they grow up in 20 to 25 years and it's their turn to have stronger positional leadership. Kids can be leaders all the way through. We are very big proponents of youth involvement all the way through. Ask your kids how to help form your community for 20 to 25 to 30 years out. So that's one of the things that I wanted to be sure and include while we're in this 20-year thought process as we kind of wrap around what a startup community element needs to include.
So that's really important, because the decisions you make today, your children will be affected. I read a quote today that says, your country, your community right now is what your children were reading when they were kids.
Oh,
and so
yeah.
You look around, what are your kids reading right now? What are they reading in the news? What are they reading about your community? And as children, because that's what their brain is starting to develop around, you are creating that culture. You are creating their perception of how they view your community, which is going to affect how they view the community as they grow up.
So in addition to reading about it, what are you saying about your community? When you're at the coffee shop, which is getting easier and easier now because of the vaccines, the more we are together as we're coming out of COVID, because that light is getting brighter and brighter and brighter. What are you saying about your community? What's happened in this last year? What's really super exciting that you just can't wait to tell the world about? Let's start saying it.
So here I'm going to show you, you might know this as the iceberg factor, all right? But the iceberg factor carries into your community. It's called your culture. Right? So what you're viewing of your community today is only a small sliver of what your community has used to form where it is today. So you take that time from that person jumping off the wagon, planting their flag. You have created a culture based upon the perception of people as you have grown up, as your community has grown to create your present day community. Now, most people and most communities will keep that history submerged. They will talk about the good stuff, but they won't talk about the value stuff. They won't talk about why did we make this decision. They don't talk about how they made this decision. They don't talk about how do we make decisions here. It's just the way we do it. It's perception. It is habit. And 96% of the things a human does is subconscious thought. And that's the iceberg factor. That's your subconscious. This is the subconscious. Below the surface is everything that you're doing above the surface, not consciously, because that's the way your community has learned it. It's pretty simple, people. It's pretty simple. When you want to change the way you do things, you have to look at them differently. All right. You have to look at it differently, but you have to go back. You have to learn why you're where you are. So you're looking in the rearview mirror. You're going back and you're studying 20 years of why you're doing what you're doing this 20 years. And then you have to figure out what you want to do in the next 20 years. So you have to change your actions to get to different results that you want. Because if you do the same actions over and over again, you're going to get the same results, but you expect different results. That's it. That's what drives me nuts about economic development. That's what drives me nuts about community development these days, is that we have focused so long on economic development of recruiting companies, providing tax incentives, that's the way we think we need to do economic development. That's not going to work anymore. And I sure hope that the communities that hear this are going to start changing the way that they do things, because they get pretty passionate about this, that if you are on the leading edge, it's going to be a little bit of blood, but if you are on the leading edge, you are going to be a community that grows. If you have telecommunications systems within your community, you need to not just build a space for entrepreneurs. You need to build the people that are going to support entrepreneurship. You need to build the environment in your community that's going to support entrepreneurship. It's not just let's redo a building. It is let's redo our environment within our community. That's your first step. Build trust and build a long-term commitment. Have a long-term view, a long-term commitment to where maybe your first 15 years, you're not going to see anything done. But then all of a sudden, it's going to break out, break through, and you will see exponential growth, and you will see benefits, and you will see people building people. Just talk about the community of Ord, Nebraska. They have done it, right? And they are doing it, but it's taken them a long time, and they continue to look out into the future.
So the name, just to make sure that you understand that, I'll spell it. It's O-R-D like dog, Ord, Nebraska. And our partner, Don Mackey, with the E2 Entrepreneurial Ecosystem organization, he is the one who has led a lot of research, a lot of the study, a lot of the evolution of Ord, Nebraska. So, and it's taken more like 25 to 40 years from the time that a gentleman named Bob Stoll came back and said, hey, my town is not looking good. Its future is kind of sketchy. Am I going to leave and bail and abandon the ship and just let it sink? Or am I going to take some responsibility for my hometown, and am I going to make a difference? Am I going to work on the relationships and the engagement that build trust? Am I going to work on relationships that connect with collaboration, get things going? That's going to build unity. Am I going to engage my community members, help work with them to collaborate on new ways of thinking? That's going to build great policy for my community. And you put that all together, and if you're tracking, relationships, engagement, collaboration are our pillars. And that builds entrepreneurial wealth. And that's what's happened in Ord, Nebraska over the course of 25 to 40 years. And there's a paper out on it. Let us know if you're interested. We can help you connect and read up about that. But Ord is a great example of what a startup community can do. They're attracting people. Their average age of their residents now is somewhere in the 35 to 50-year-old category, much younger than a number of rural American communities. They have millions and millions and millions of dollars in investment, and they're getting to those projects that Frank mentioned. Maybe you aren't going to see an awful lot of change in the first few years, but you're changing the thinking. And the thinking is what's going to make the projects just snap and come into life with so much enthusiasm and so much excitement and so much potential. So people are moving to Ord, to a little tiny town in an area that's only 10,000 people. But they are growing and they are vibrant and they are excited.
So we're going to get to or a little bit more. We're going to dig deeper into that as this evolves. So we don't want to get too deep in here because losing those factors of what are the two factors? One is a 20-year commitment, a 20-year a vision, a 20-year viewpoint, right? 20 to 25-year viewpoint of where you're going. Always looking 20 to 25 years out. Always looking 20 to 25 years out. The second one is building trust. And building trust is by building relationships and building an environment of engagement. Engagement is listening to them and listening to your marginalized community, listening to those folks that you don't normally listen to, listening to those folks that you have pushed to the side because you think that you know better, but you're not listening to them. So if you put those two factors in, you build on the pillars, then you will have the essence of a startup community. Does it mean you're going to be successful? No, because entrepreneurs aren't always successful. Are you going to have failures? Yes. Do you know how to fail? I don't know. That's up to you. So if you want to know more, contact us at frank@ghorizons.com or kim@ghorizons.com. We're rural community solutions where we help design family-friendly, youth-centered places that help attract the people that you want, because people are looking for where they want to live and then bringing their job with them or finding a job where they live.
We're so grateful that you have joined us today, either on YouTube or on Facebook. We're here every day, Monday through Friday at 11:30 a.m. Central Daylight Time. And you can also download our podcast if you go to anchor.fm/Frank Spillers and look for Think Like an Entrepreneur, Become a Spark Plug.
So come back tomorrow. Tomorrow, it's going to be great. We've got an interview tomorrow that you are going to love. He's going to be releasing a new book. He's written a new book. And just in his release, he has worked with startup communities. He has worked with entrepreneurs. He has worked with ecosystems. You're going to love our interview. So come on back tomorrow at 11:30 Central Daylight Time, right here, Rural Community Solutions TV live stream on our YouTube channel or Rural Community Solutions on our Facebook page. And you will hear firsthand the successes of startup communities from our guest.
Ooh, is that a tickler?
We'll see you tomorrow.
Have a great day. Take care.
Bye.
Bye-bye.